Hey, I'm Luke Edmonson,
Hey, I'm David Edmonson.
and together we're excited to be going on this journey together with you. I know you've been doing photography for quite some time.
I think a little bit over 40 years, and this journey that I've been on with Luke for the last 5 years is to really change our approach to photography, to bring art back into it, and I'm excited to be able to share this with you and with Luke.
So the purpose of this email course is a little bit different than some of the other photography courses that you might take part on or go and learn from.
Completely different.
Well, there's a reason for that. The reason is because, let's just use an example of a photographer many people have heard of, Henry Cartier-Bresson. Some may not know that he originally started as a painter, and in his own life, his mentor would take him to do two things. Number one,
Go to the Louvre.
they would go to the Louvre to look at the Renaissance art in order to be able to understand the works of the old masters. And then the other part was they would go to the contemporary art museums, and or as you would call them, a salon.
To the salons, mainly sometimes the photographers were the only ones that had studios, and they would turn them into salons so that people could show their artwork.
Sure. And so the reason they did that is because Cubism and Surrealism was happening. And so while there are rules and principles to art, people also look for ways to be able to push beyond those boundaries. But one of the things that we've identified is that most photographers start off and they're learning how to use their camera to begin with. And so there's a whole period that you spend just learning the equipment and the techniques, right? And then there's kind of this next level, let's say 3 years in or whatever, where suddenly they go, okay, I know how to use my camera and equipment, but what I don't know how to create images that have impact.
So true. And throughout history until the last generation, people who understood these principles went into a thing called pictorialism, which was so important because they were still telling stories back then and having impact. And now all of a sudden, kind of since World War II, that has stopped, and we have a whole generation of people that don't know about the art and the storytelling aspect of photography.
Okay, well, okay, I hear you. I'd like further explanation of that, because I think that there are a lot of art and storytelling photographers that are out there. In fact, many of the current younger generation, you can look at the work of many of the newer emerging artists, and they're doing a lot of storytelling with their images. A lot of it's based off of perhaps compositing or different things like that, creating virtual vignettes and virtual worlds. So I guess what I'm asking for is, can you clarify that?
I would love to clarify that. What they have forgotten is some of the design principles and the ways to use color, contrast, all these different things, and how to approach their artwork. And we would love to teach people that so that they can have that in their tool belt, so that they can have something that they can go, here's why I'm doing this, and here's why I'm using the difference between vivid and pale and textured and smooth, all these different principles.
So in other words, you're trying to help people understand the nuance of doing things so they can use it more effectively, and for some people to even explain to them the foundations so that they know how to be creative and make intentional decisions.
Absolutely. This is very intentional, and actually after this 5-year study that we've been doing together, we believe that in the next 30 days, we can completely change the style in which you're doing and equip you with maybe 5 or 6 more tools in your tool belt.
So that leads me to the purpose of this. The reason that you're here is because what we're trying to do is help you learn how to apply the principles of art and design and other visual mediums to your photography. Many of you may have had exposure to the principles, but you haven't necessarily ever learned it or mastered it. You've mastered the camera, now you need to understand how do you use your camera to communicate more effectively.
That's true.
And then within that, what we want you to do is learn how to, people have heard this term pre-visualization, but many people hear it but don't know how to do it. And so we want to walk you through that ability to be able to pre-visualize in your mind and really be able to see what it is that you're going for before you ever pick up your camera.
Absolutely. This is very important to know that. And it's pretty simple too.
Well, that's the goal, is to take complex things and make them simple for you.
That's right.
That's what we're trying to do with this. And then finally, we want to help you develop your ability to work without the limitations that you may feel, whether that's equipment, lighting, if it's resources, whatever it is. All of us have reasons that we can't do things, but when you boil it all down, oftentimes it's really that you don't have any ideas.
People say, and I think we talked about this, I don't have the time to do it. And then if you give them the time, they go, well, I don't have the resources to do it. If you give them the resources, then they kind of sheepishly look and say, I don't have any concepts.
I don't have any ideas.
That's right.
Right. And so that becomes one of the challenges is you pick up your camera and sometimes you know exactly what it is you want to shoot and sometimes you don't. So how do you bridge that gap? And certainly when you're given an assignment, how is it that you go about and execute something even if it's somebody else's idea, which is a very typical situation if you're a commercial photographer, for instance.
Absolutely.
Now, this particular course is not designed for one type of photographer in mind. It doesn't matter if you're a portrait photographer, a commercial, or if you're a fashion photographer, if you're starting out in your journey, a wedding photographer, whatever. All these principles apply regardless of the genre or style that you shoot.
That's exactly right.
So what are some of the things that they might need in order to prepare for this course?
Well, first of all, they need a number 2 pencil.
If they don't have a number 2 pencil, can they still take the course?
Absolutely.
Yep. You really don't need that number 2 pencil.
And they need this right here.
What, the syllabus?
A piece of paper.
Oh, a piece of paper. Got it.
And a syllabus.
Yep. Well, those would be good things for you to be able to have. At some points you will need a piece of paper in order to complete some assignments. So let's frame this real quickly on how this works. So there's going to be a series of 15 emails. Those 15 emails are spaced out so that they arrive every other day. Now, why do we want them to arrive every other day?
Because I want you to be able to just kind of sit and let it kind of just melt with you almost. Let it
melt with you.
Well, that's a good word to say. I'll come up with another good word. I want you to be able to sit and absorb it. I don't want it to just like be a splash of rain that just splashes off. I want you to absorb over a 48-hour period before we hit you with the next email.
And I'd say that we recognize that you're busy and that you have many distractions in life. So therefore, building in this time gives you the ability to get the email, read it at your leisure, and then be able to complete the assignment, whether it's done that same day or if you do it the following. Once you've done your assignment, then we want you to go ahead and post it inside of the Facebook group so that you guys can engage in discussion and in the community to be able to learn from each other. Because I think as you have different aha moments, those collective aha moments coming together is where real powerful lessons are going to come to
In fact, I would say these 15 emails are 15 of our aha moments that have made us a different photographer.
Absolutely. What we tried to do is take vast and different concepts and then figure out how do we simplify them so that even we can understand it, because only once we can understand it can we ever teach it, right? And that's the goal, is to make it so that you perhaps have heard something before or maybe never heard it before, yet for the first time it really clicks, right? Because once it clicks, that's when you can start to apply it in your daily photography.
Even in fact, I noticed the other day you're cropping your images differently.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's all because of studying foundations and compositions and different things like that, and being able to see more beyond the rule of thirds. And so that'll be some of the things that we go through. And your daily expectations, again, read the email. There will be links that are inside of there that sometimes provide additional or supplemental content.
Watch them. Watch the links.
Well, if there's videos, they're good. I'll tell you, like sometimes there's even like, if you want to get really deep into stuff, I'll say to you, this is going to be really in depth. If you want to see more of the historical perspective behind something, things like that, because sometimes having that context helps you understand the nuances of where things come from.
Yeah, and Luke has done extensive research in trying to find the simplest things that are out there on the web that are the best for you to hear in the shortest amount of time. The great thing about the internet is that there's a lot of information out there, but there's a lot of it that'll actually sidetrack you rather than focus you. You know, everybody goes, if I only had this lens, if I only had this, if I only had that. But what is the best piece of equipment that you can have?
Well, the most powerful tool you have is your voice, certainly. And a piece of equipment doesn't solve your problems, it solves a particular problem. And I think that's what you're trying to express.
Absolutely.
The other two things I'd say we should quickly touch on is I'll talk first about Catherine Ann Porter. Today's lesson, we're going to be talking about Catherine Ann Porter, and she was asked in an interview, about the idea of style and how do you go about doing it. Mm-hmm. And she says, you don't create a style. You work and you develop yourself. Your style is an emanation from inside your own being. And that's powerful because so often we look externally for style. And style really comes from within us. And so Catherine will walk us through that particular process of driving that home.
And Stan Richards, another one too, changed my life as a young 20-something-year-old photographer. Completely changed my paradigm of how I saw things.
So I'm going to ask you this, because this is the topic about Stan Richards. Oftentimes people say, I need more inspiration. And we get that, and we want you to be inspired. Inspiration is good, but inspiration is equal to what, Dad? Is it a feeling?
It is a feeling. Honestly, you need to get out there and do it. It's really more of a disciplined lifestyle that we actually need as photographers because we're just kind of flighty.
Sure. And so Stan Richards says creativity doesn't need a muse, it needs a drill sergeant. And that kind of goes back into Catherine Ann Porter's premise, which is you have to work and develop yourself.
That was not my paradigm shift, though.
That was not yours. And in the email, you'll find out more about the paradigm shift. But here's the thing. The more that you do the work inside of our assignments, just know that they're there for a reason, no matter how silly it may feel at the time you're doing it. And at the end of it, we'll pull it all together so that you're able to look and you're able to say, now I get it. Now I see the value of the assignments, even when they didn't make sense at the time. So there you go.
Thanks.
We're excited to be on this journey with you, and we can't wait to get started together.